Hey guys, what's going on? Megan here. Finally, the video's out. The genetics of the Middle East. I was sick for about 2 weeks, so a lot of my videos and projects got delayed. But anyway, let's get to it. The genetics of the Middle East. I'm going to answer a lot of questions. Why is it that so many of the world's greatest empires came from this region? Keep in mind, I'm going to talk about the Middle East and also parts of North Africa, right? So that's going to include this entire region. If you notice, this overlaps with the map of the world's desert areas. And I'm going to explain why later on. Even though there's a lot of different ethnicities in here, right? Why is it that they've all evolved to produce so many great warriors and so many great empires throughout history? I mean, think about it, guys. The Akkadian Empire, Middle East. Babylonian Empire, Middle East. The Empire of the Persian Empire, the Assyrian Empire, the Islamic Caliphate, the Ottoman Empire, the Sassanid Empire, the Parthian Empire. All the greatest empires in history all came from this region, right? And obviously the Egyptian Empire and things like that. So why is it that so many warriors in the ancient days emerged from here? And keep in mind, this goes as far east as Afghanistan, right? Everyone thinks the Middle East is just Saudi Arabia and Dubai and shit. No, guys. A lot of the adaptations that we're going to discuss in this video are shared by a vast number of people in this region, right? As far north as Turkey and Georgia and some parts of Central Asia, and like I said, as far east as Afghanistan. And of course, a lot of reasons, right? There's a lot of reasons why that region of the world produced so many empires and so many warriors. But today we're going to focus on one key gene. Before we go into the video, remember, guys, stop being butthurt about race. I say this every time, but I still see you guys in the comment section having political wars and race wars. Guys, cut that shit out, right? This is 2022, and it blows my mind that some of you guys are still supremacists and still racist. Cut that shit out, man. We should be able to talk about these things without someone getting butthurt or someone having a superiority complex, right? To me, the differences between people is one of the most fascinating things. And that's why I love genetics so much. It's so amazing how humans were able to adapt to almost every single region of the world, right? And adapting to those regions led to genetic and epigenetic changes that create some of the differences that we see, right? So depending on where your ancestors adapt to and had to survive, you're going to see a high proportion of genetic polymorphisms there. That doesn't mean that everyone within that population, is going to have that phenotype, right? It just means there's going to be a higher frequency of those genes, right? So watch my previous videos if you haven't. So far, we did West Africans, we did Europeans, we did East Africans, we did South Asians, we did Eurasians, we did Native Americans. So once again, get caught up on those videos. But like I said, stop getting butthurt about the differences between people. At the end of the day, we are all related if you go back far enough. Remember, the human race started out in Africa and spread through the rest of the world, and we had to adapt to different biomes along the way, which is what produced all those differences. And along the way, we also mixed with different archaic species such as Neanderthals and Denisovans, but even Neanderthals are descendants of, if you go back far enough, from Homo erectus, which originated out of Africa, right? So at the end of the day, we are all fucking related, right? So cut the race bullshit. Cut the, oh, I'm better than you, I'm worse than this, right? Stop it. I have friends from all over the world, and when I meet someone from a different culture, I have intense admiration. In fact, I'm more excited about people's ancestry than they are. Like, I meet somebody from anywhere in the world, and I'm quizzing them, like, oh my God, like, what were your ancestors doing? Tell me about your culture, tell me about your cuisine. So guys, please keep the politics out of this, and especially keep the religion out of this, because this video is going to mention the Middle East, and I know there's going to be a lot of people in the comment section fighting over Islam and Christianity and whatever. Fuck off, guys, right? Go argue religion somewhere else. You guys know I can't fucking stand religion anyway, so go argue religion somewhere else. Go argue politics somewhere else. I treat people based on the individual, right? I don't care what group you're from. I don't care if you're black. I'm gonna treat you like an individual. I don't care if you're South Asian, if you're Asian, if you're white. I'm not gonna treat you based on what your ancestors did. I'm not gonna blame you for what your ancestors did because, like I said, if you go back far enough, everybody has blood on their hands anyway, right? So I treat people based on the individual. For example, right? I just said I can't stand religion, right? Spirituality is a whole different thing. If you're spiritual, good, right? I fuck with spiritual people. If you're religious, I'm not a big fan of religious people, especially the ones who like to shove their religion down everybody's throat. But that doesn't mean that if I meet someone who's Christian or Muslim, I'm going to treat them differently. No, I'm going to treat them like any other guy. All right, so back to the video. Remember, guys, natural selection, right? I'm gonna skip the details because a lot of guys I've seen my previous videos. It's simply when geography, nature decides which genes are gonna be passed on more easily in an environment. So on the left, the green mice are gonna pass on their genes a lot faster because they're better camouflaged. Whereas on the right side, it's gonna be the brown mice. Same thing here. It's going to be the white mice, not the purple ones, right? Everyone is born with mutations, and based on the environment you adapting to, certain mutations are gonna give you a survival advantage, which is why we are so different, even though we are part of the human race. Now, before we talk about the genetics of the Middle East, we have to talk about the fight or flight system. Guys, you gotta understand that humans have the ability to go Kaioken, right? My Dragon Ball Z nerds know what I'm talking about. Humans have the ability to go Super Saiyan for a very short amount of time, and that's simply your fight or flight response, right? Whenever your brain perceives a threat, your body kicks into overdrive, activates your fight or flight response, right? Your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and you temporarily become a fucking problem. You temporarily become a beast. Your muscles tense up so that you're ready to exert force. Your eyesight temporarily improves so that you're able to scan for threats. Your energy levels go through the roof because, again, your body starts to break down glycogen. Cortisol kicks in, increases blood glucose. So you temporarily get a burst of energy. You temporarily get a huge reduction in pain sensitivity. So you can actually, that's why some people in the middle of a fight or while they're fighting a bear or some shit that they don't even feel pain until it's over, right? You get a temporary reduction in pain. So your pain threshold actually goes up. You temporarily become fearless, right? Again, it's called a fight or flight. So for the guy who runs away, it's a different story. But if you decide to stand your ground, you temporarily become fearless. We've seen it with mothers protecting their kids from bears. We've seen it with hunters and gatherers chasing after lions and shit. When the lion grabs one of their children, your breathing rate goes up, so your lungs can take in more oxygen. Your heart starts to beat like crazy. Again, shuttling more blood flow, more nutrients to all the parts of your body that need it. Even your hearing improves, right? So all your senses become fine tuned. And sure enough, that includes your sense of smell. So you become a fucking beast temporarily. And this thing happens so fucking quick, right? And one of the main things that kickstarts that is obviously an increase in blood flow, right? Blood pressure. Your blood pressure has to go up so that blood can go through all of the muscles and all of the regions that are needed, and also so that blood can go away from the areas that are not needed while you're dealing with the threat. So, for example, your digestion system will obviously temporarily go down, your reproductive system, blah, blah, blah. And also, blood will go away from your skin to your more important organs, right? So, a lot of this, right? A big percentage of this response requires an increase in blood pressure. If you cannot increase your blood pressure fast enough, you're going to have a very, very delayed or inefficient fight or flight response. Now, what does this have to do with the people of the Middle East? Well, let's look here. First, you got to look at the ACE gene, right? And this is a gene that I mentioned before several times in this video, along with actinin 3 and all the other heavily researched genes. But long story short, ACE stands for angiotensin converting enzyme. It's part of the RAS system, which is needed to increase your blood pressure. Long story short, without boring you with the science, this is one of the main enzymes that allows you to increase your blood pressure. That's why when you have high blood pressure, what do they prescribe? ACE blockers or ACE inhibitors, right? And obviously, just like every enzyme in your body, it is coded by a gene, which is the ACE gene, right? If you do not have this gene, or if you cannot make enough of the enzyme, you're gonna have a hard time converting angiotensin into its active form, right? Converting angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2, which is the active form. Now, everyone has the gene, of course, if you're normal, but there are different polymorphisms, right? For example, you have the insertion polymorphism and you have the deletion polymorphism. Long story short, if you have the I allele, then your body cannot make the ACE enzyme fast enough, so it's going to take you a long time to increase your blood pressure. And if you have the D allele, then it's the opposite. Your body actually makes the enzyme a lot faster. So you can increase your blood pressure faster than someone on this side. And as you can imagine, if you D, meaning obviously you got the D from your mom and the other D from your father, you're gonna have an advantage in power, in power sports, in combat sports, in anything that requires you to increase your blood pressure very fucking fast. Right? Whereas if you have the II version, then you're gonna have an advantage in, marathon events, endurance events, things where you actually do not want your blood pressure to go up too fast. Now, it's obviously more complicated than this, but I have to keep it simple for the purpose of this video. So once again, if you have the DD version, then you can increase your blood pressure very fast. You can turn on your sympathetic nervous system. You can turn on that Kaioken pathway extremely fast, right? So that is very, very beneficial if you're a warrior, right? Which is literally you turning on your sympathetic nervous system the moment you see an opponent. Whereas the I motherfuckers are more like, holy shit, give me a minute, give me a minute to turn on Kaioken, right? Guys, real life is not like Dragon Ball Z where your enemy stands there and watches you power up, right? That's not what's gonna happen in real life. In real life, you don't turn on your sympathetic nervous system fast enough, you are fucked, right? So clearly, people that have the DD polymorphism have an advantage in combat sports, and the research has confirmed that over and over again. Now, what does this have to do with the Middle East and North Africa and parts of Central Asia? Bang! Look at this, guys. So I graphed it for you. There goes MENA, right? Middle East and North Africa. Look at this. They have the highest frequency of the ACE-D polymorphism, the D allele, right? Number one is the Middle East. Number two is West Africans, which again makes sense when you look at the representation in power sports. Number three, you have Europeans. Number four, you have India. India is really close. And then you see Asia, America, and Oceania. And as you can tell, the further away you go from desert areas, the further away you go from, hot, dry climates, the less you see a high representation of the D allele, which makes sense. I mean, think about it. If you evolved, right, if you adapted to the desert where it's extremely dry, it's extremely hard to find water, you're prone to dehydration, guess what? Your body is going to start selecting for people that have the D allele of the ACE gene. Because another thing that the ACE enzyme does, in addition to increasing your sympathetic nervous system activity and your aggression and things like that, is it increases water retention, right? Which is again how it increases your blood pressure, and it also increases sodium retention. And sure enough, if you evolved, if your ancestors had to adapt to the desert or desert regions, which is one of the most ruthless places in ancient history, where there's barely any water, you constantly leaking sodium because you're sweating, are we surprised that the populations who had to adapt here have the highest frequencies of the ACE-DD polymorphisms? Of course not. It's common sense, right? The desert is literally like starting, like if your ancestors were born in the desert, that is literally starting life on the hardest difficulty you could think about. It's like starting a video game on nightmare mode, because you guys know you can go weeks and months without food. You cannot go more than a few days without water, right? So these guys had to have the ability to retain sodium, the ability to retain water, right? And sure enough, it also gave them a huge advantage in warfare, because, as I mentioned earlier, one of the advantages of ACEDD is not just an increase in blood pressure, not just an increase in sodium and water retention. It's also an increase in sympathetic nervous system activity, right? Kaioken, fight or flight response. Oh, and another reason why the people from that area were selected to have the D version of the ACE gene is because, think about it, they are from a culture of honor. If you study cultures of honor throughout the world, you know that they select for some of the most vicious, most violent, and most brave of men, right? Because in cultures of honor, remember, guys, out of the three different types of societies, the three main society types that humans have adapted to, that humans have evolved in, you have hunter-gatherers, farmers, and nomads, right? Pastoralists. Remember, pastoralists tend to invent cultures of honor. They tend to come up with cultures of honor significantly more than hunter-gatherers and farmers. Why? Because in pastoralist societies, it is extremely easy for someone to just come up overnight and steal all your shit, right? That is well known. If you come from a pastoralist society, you can lose all of your wealth overnight. Right? Someone can just come in and take all of your cows away, all of your camels away, all of your sheep, all your goats, and you wake up the next day and you went from like a millionaire back then to like zero overnight. So those cultures had to develop strong reputations for vengeance, for violence, right? Because again, you wanted to keep people away from your shit. Can you blame those people? Can you imagine? You work so hard to accumulate your wealth, to accumulate all these herds, right? And then overnight it's all gone, right? And then the person who stole your shit goes from zero to 100, and you go from 100 to zero. Yeah. So those cultures, remember, they're not just in the Middle East. There's some in Africa. There are cultures of honor in Africa, in Europe, right? In fact, a lot of the people who settled in the American South are from cultures of honor, Scotland and things like that. And it's the same pattern. They are very nice people, but when you fuck with them, they will take your head off in a heartbeat, right? And like I said, it's because they had to adapt to the environment. They had to adapt to an environment where somebody can steal your shit any day. And if you lose all of your wealth overnight, you have to sell yourself into slavery, because now you can't pay your debts, right? You can't pay your debts, and now everyone looks down on you. So they had to evolve cultures of bravery, cultures of vengeance, right? A lot of vendettas, a lot of clan, a lot of wars, a lot of conflicts between clans, right? They had to produce some of the bravest, fiercest, strongest, most courageous men. Because if they didn't, they died. So you combine, if you look at the people of the Middle East, you combine being brought up in the desert, which is nightmare mode, combined, right? Remember, you're in the desert, meaning it's already hard to find water, it's hard to find food, and then you combine that, a pastoralist society where people are constantly trying to steal your shit 24/7. You of course you're gonna produce some of the world's best warriors. Because what is the alternative? The alternative is you die. The alternative is someone comes, steals your shit, and eventually they steal your wife, they steal your daughter. You come home and everything is gone. And now somebody else is clapping your wife's cheeks. Who the fuck wants that? That will make any man become ruthless, right? Which is why I don't judge, right? I look at every tribe, every culture, and I try my best not to judge because a lot of people did what they had to do to survive to the era that they were brought up in. Now, that doesn't justify things, but at the same time, we shouldn't demonize people when we study history. So that is why there were some of the most efficient warriors in history. Of course, there are many, many other reasons. If I have time, I'm going to make videos on the other genes that helped a lot of these guys conquer the known world at the time. But for now, we just focus on AC, right? And I mean, even if you look at Islam, once again, you guys know I'm not a fan of religion at all, but you got to give credit where credit is due. Islam spread across the world at an incredibly fast rate. And it was mainly through conquest, right? Conquest is obviously trade and things like that, but it's mainly through conquest, right? Most religions spread through conquest. A lot of these warriors, whenever they dominated an area, they gave you an ultimatum. One, convert to Islam. Two, pay the tax. Or three, die. So obviously a lot of people just chose to convert. Don't get me wrong, there are some who converted, by choice, but again, that's a topic for another video, right? And you have to remember that Islam was spread mainly by a group of very small tribes, right? Inhabitants of the desert. They were very underrated. They were slapped on by the Roman Empire and the Parthian Empire. People thought, oh, look at these desert dwellers, they're not a threat. And then they came out of nowhere and then spread through the known world like a fire, right? Very, very fascinating, if you ask me. And it's sad that a lot of these stories are not taught in school simply because, again, especially if you live in the West likes to demonize, uh, you know, Muslim populations. The West likes to demonize the East and, make it seem like all of them are terrorists and all of them are, it's all bullshit. It's all propaganda, guys. If you put, like I said, if you put politics aside and you put religion aside and you actually study the history of every culture, you will see that there's a lot that the people of the Middle East contributed to world civilizations. And it's sad that today we can't have these conversations because, like I said, because of religion and politics. But anyway, guys, I'm rambling. Conclusion: the people of the Middle East, on average, right? That doesn't mean every single person in the Middle East have the highest frequency of the D allele, which gives them an advantage in combat sports, gives them an advantage in some power sports, because obviously you have to combine, that gene with a bunch of other genes, right? It's never just one gene that does everything. So it's a combination. But there's also a downside. Remember, there's a downside to every gene, right? Remember, if you have that gene which gave your ancestors an advantage back in the days, today it's actually harmful if you're sedentary, right? If you're eating a lot of processed foods, a lot of sodium. Remember, your body's already good at retaining water and sodium. So you combine that with a shitty diet, you're going to have a lot of issues with hypertension, diabetes, and sure enough, we see this a lot in the Middle East, right? A lot of diabetes, a lot of hypertension, high blood pressure, metabolic syndrome, right? So the same genes that helped the ancestors survive and win so many wars today is killing a lot of them, right? So you have to look at the pros and cons of every adaptation. Another downside is it makes you very, very prone to violence, right? If you already have other genetic polymorphisms that make you prone to violence, and you combine that with the D allele, you're gonna be a person that's very easy to irritate. You're gonna have bursts of anger. You're gonna have, because remember, it's very easy for you to turn on your sympathetic nervous system, right? So if you combine that with some other genes, which I'm gonna make videos about in the future, the genes that affect aggression and anger, holy shit, you're gonna be one violent motherfucker. Not everyone, of course, right? Not everyone that has that gene is gonna be violent. Don't take me out of context, but if you have uh, if you're already predisposed to violence, so if you have the bad version of the MOA gene or COMT, things like that, you are going to have issues with violence. In fact, growing up in West Africa, a lot of the um, people from the Middle East that I grew up around, they used to beat the shit out of their wives, and I know part of it is also culture, part of it is, the way they were brought up, but they were known as some violent motherfuckers. They would just snap at the smallest thing, and they would, pull out a knife, or like I said, they would beat the shit out of their wives. Once again, I'm not saying that everyone from the Middle East does that, because I know somebody's going to my comment section and, oh, you saying people in the Middle East are aggressive? Shut the fuck up, right? Don't take me out of context. Don't strawman me. I'm just saying a lot of them, specifically the people that I believe had those genes, were prone to violence. Which is why the knowledge of genetics is so important, because once you know what you're predisposed to, then you're able to do things to mitigate uh, the downsides that come with your genotype. You're able to channel your rage and aggression into something else, like sports. But anyway, guys, that's it. Like I said, this video can be 2 hours long. There's so much to talk about as far as the genetics of the Middle East, but I will be here all fucking day. So I'm going to try to just do it into segments, release some slowly over time. Remember, the Middle East is huge, right? There's a lot of different ethnic groups, a lot of different clans. But for the sake of the videos, I have to lump people up together based on the natural selection pressures that they were under. But hope this video helps. See you guys in the comment section, and stay tuned for future videos. Oh, and don't forget to fucking subscribe, man, and join the Reddit as well. All right, guys, don't forget to like or share the video, subscribe and hit the bell, and buy my HSP Nucleus Overload Training Program. It's the ultimate program for maximum muscle growth. It includes full body workout splits, bro splits, push-pull, home workouts, you name it. Also comes with a complete guide for macros, nutrition, fat loss, muscle growth, hormones, including a meal plan. It's pretty much all my 16 years of experience condensed into one fucking book. You're also going to get free copies of any future edition. So visit Team3DAlpha.com, and you can use the 40% off coupon code Nucleus Overload. Or you could just buy the shit at full price. Alright, guys, I'm out of here.